There's that message. Okay, thanks.
Yes, everybody's properly warned, being recorded. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. This is
Are you like observing the material this way?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Ron from Legal Server, and I will be doing the training this afternoon. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. You can see our agenda for today is to talk about events and tasks on cases.
Yep. Love you.
And also talking about running reports. Sorry, I had to mute somebody there. We're getting some background noise. So we're scheduled to go for 2 hours today. I don't think it'll probably take the whole 2 hours, but we'll see. If you haven't been on one of these Zoom sessions before, one of these training sessions, we encourage questions as we go through the training. Don't feel like you're interrupting me or you have to wait till the end or something to ask a question. You can ask a question either by unmuting yourself or posting a message in the Zoom chat room. If you haven't seen those before, usually if you float your mouse cursor over the window where you can see my screen, you'll see a black bar will pop up, and over on the left, you'll see where you can mute and unmute yourself, and then over towards the right of that bar, you'll see where you can open up the window for the chat room. All right, with that administrative stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about events and tasks in Legal Server. And for your purposes, we're talking about events and tasks on cases. So I'm going to flip over to your demo site that we've been working on. And so I'm just going to go into one of my cases. It's on my homepage in my assignments list. So I'm going to click on the case number to get to the case profile. So if I scroll down a little bit below this area at the top here, we see the row of tabs that you have on your case profile. And the third tab over is task and events. So this is going to show you any incomplete task, excuse me, on this case and any upcoming events. Notice that both of these lists have some default filters on them. So status equals incomplete, the completed equals NA knows, kind of belt and suspenders. And then the upcoming events has a default filter that goes out for a month. You can remove any of these filters temporarily. So if you wanted to see, complete and incomplete tasks on the case, you can remove those. If you wanted to see all events that have been linked to the case, you can remove that filter as well. If you have a case that's got tons of tasks on it or tons of events, you also, for each one of these lists, you have the show hide filters icon, a little funnel / golf tee. And each of these lists will let you filter on various things. So the filters are different between the two different lists. And so as you can see, the upcoming events, there's only 3 different things that you can filter on there. All right, so that's any existing records. If you want to create a new task or event on a case, then there's a couple of ways that you can do it. Each of these lists, if you happen to be looking at them, they have a plus button. So you have the little plus button on the task list is to add a new task. The plus button on the events list is to schedule a new event. You also, in your actions menu, you have links to add a task and add a new event. And you also have a link to add a deadline, which we'll talk about, which is just a special type of task. So let's do a task first. So I'm going to click on the little plus button. So hopefully you've attended enough of the trainings and or been on your demo site and you realize that's going to open up a form that we need to fill out. The form is going to have some required fields that we have to fill out and then some other things that are optional. So at the top of the page, we see that this event, or this task, I should say, is going to be linked to the case that I was on. So I'm in trouble. Then title is a required field. So I'm just going to say, this is my important task. The due date is optional. The due date is nice if you're going to do reminders because you can do reminders relative. So you can manually type in a due date. You also have little the calendar icon out to the right, which will just let you pick a date. And then you also have this little calculator link down here. So what the calculator link will let you do, it's entirely optional, is it'll let you calculate a due date based on the current date or any other date that you want to put in here. So the sort of typical thing is, you get something, you've got 35 days to reply to it. You want to create a task for that. So if you say 35 days after, it's going to default to today's date. It'll figure out, 35 days from now is July 27th. So a common question at this point is, especially if this is something, you have to file something in response in court. What if this is a Saturday or a Sunday or a court holiday? So the bad news is that LegalServer doesn't have any concept of, what your court holidays are, or for these purposes, what is a Saturday or a Sunday. And so it won't know, let's say this July 27th falls on, let's say a Monday, and it's a court holiday. So you actually have until July 28th to file whatever you're filing. So that's the bad news. The good news part of it is that, your due dates, if you calculate them this way, will always be early. They would never be late. The list date on task is the date that you want the task to start showing up. For the way that you all are using tasks, I'm sure you're just always going to leave it at today's date. Tasks can have different types. And this is a list of values that your site administrators control. And so I can see that somebody has been in, either we've imported from your existing data or somebody's been in and added some of these, because some of these are not sort of the standard LegalServer ones. You can select any of those. Completed is defaulting to no. So it's assuming you're creating a new task. You don't want to immediately mark it completed, but you do have the option to do that. You have a text box. You can record a note that's linked to this task. Mildly confusingly says calendar notes out to the left, but this would be a note that's going to be linked to the specific task. So I'm going to just say my task note here. If I enter a note here, I can email a note or send it as a message. Hopefully you've seen these features before in many places in LegalServer where you can enter a note. You can also send an email to somebody. If you click the choose recipients button, you can enter email addresses in here manually. You can also do search and select just by typing somebody's name, and then you depending on what's in your contacts database, you may get a match there that you can select somebody. If you get the chance to get on your demo site and you haven't already heard this, the emailing feature for notes only sends to people who are site administrators. So that's not a limitation that will happen on your live site. You also can, instead of or in addition to emailing, you can send a note as an internal message within LegalServer. So if I come in here, I can select, Stan in here. That would show up as a message for him. Excuse me, I'll go ahead and select myself. So in case you haven't seen the message feature before. So there's a field private here. In theory, this would, if somebody was looking around and trying to get to other people's tasks within the system, it might hide the details of the task from them. I always just tell people, just pretend that field's not here. If you have something that for some reason is truly private that nobody else should see, don't put it in LegalServer as a task. At a minimum, your site administrators can see every task within the system. One or more people need to be linked to the task. So you're by default, you, the person filling out the form, you're going to be a user on the task. You do have a remove link here. So if you're creating a task, you can create it for one or more other people and remove yourself, or you can come in and, you know, search and select for other people and select them. Every task is linked to an office and a program, which is going to default for you. Then finally on tasks, we get to the reminders section. So I always warn people before I click on add reminder, don't be overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that's going to show up here. There's a lot of different things that you can do in terms of reminders on tasks, and we'll see the same thing on events, but you're not required to use all those different things. So if you're just simply wanting a reminder for yourself, there's not that many things to click on. So I'm going to click on the add reminder button and scroll down so you can see all the different things that are showing up here. Also notice first that there is an add reminder button again down here, so you can have multiple reminders for the same task or the same calendar event on a case. So the when to send by default is going to say relative to, and then you can say however many minutes before the start time, how many hours before the start time, if you have a use for it, even number of days before the start time. And then you just say how many minutes you want, or how many hours you want, how many days you want. So I'm going to say 30 minutes before. You also instead can select a specific time and just enter, a specific date and time for that reminder to be sent. And I clicked on it and wiped out my previous selection. There's a message here that you can set up, and you also have the ability to set up certain templates if those are going to be useful for you. You don't have to do anything with the message section. If you're going to have an email sent as a reminder, there's just a stock email that LegalServer will use that's generally sufficient for most people. Then over on the right-hand side, you get the recipients that you want to receive the reminder and how you want them to receive it. So you've got some default people show up here. So myself, because I'm assigned to the case, I'm in trouble, the client, and then Stan, because he's an attendee on this task. Then you have the three different ways that people can potentially be reminded. So you have email, the message center, and then since you all have the texting module, SMS, you might be able to send it that way. But it's probably a little bit hard to see, but some of these boxes I can select, and some of them are grayed out. They have a little light gray border. And for example, if I put my mouse cursor over SMS for my reminder, then you might be able to see a little pop-up came up there. It says no mobile phone number. So if there's no mobile phone number for me in the system, then it can't send me a text. The client's options are all grayed out because there's no mobile phone number. Clients can't get messages through the LegalServer Message Center. And then finally, there's no email address for this client on this case. For Stan, I can email it. I can also send to him through the Message Center. And then in the demo site, he doesn't have a mobile phone number. So I'll just say we're going to get both emails and message reminders. You have a show others button here, which for this case is not going to show anybody else, but this would show you other people that have been linked to the case. So this could be people that have been linked like as case contacts, like an interpreter or opposing counsel or anybody else that's been linked to the case. You also have the outside recipients option. If you click that, then you can enter a name, first name and last name, and email, optionally a phone number. And then those outside people would get the reminder as well. So I'm going to forego that option, come down and click on continue. So that brings me back to the I'm in trouble case. And now if I come down and look at the tasks and events, I can see there's the incomplete tasks that I've created. If I go up to the message center, which is the little widget at the very top of any page in LegalServer, I can see, there's the reminder about the message I got indicating the note that I entered on the task. And I can, from here, I can dismiss it. I could also reply to it. On the task list here, I've got a clickable link to the title of the task. If I click that, that's going to let me edit the task. Over on the left-hand side, I've got a link to edit the task. I also have the ability here to add additional, I should have ability to add additional notes. And actually I don't on the task. The other thing I do have up here is, it tells me this task is incomplete, and I've got a link, click here to mark this task as completed. So that would be the same thing as editing the task and then coming in and marking completed as yes, then scrolling down and clicking on continue. But I can edit anything else about the task that I want to. But if I go back to the task profile and click the little link at the top of the page, you should be able to see it's marked it as completed. Now, if I go back to my case, then notice the incomplete task list is now empty, and that's because of this default filter on status equals incomplete. If I take that out, take that off, then actually take both of those filters off, I can see that task is still in there. So it's not going to disappear from the case. It's just being filtered out by default because it's been marked as completed. Now, while we're talking about tasks, I want to go ahead and mention deadlines. So deadlines are tasks, and they just have an additional attribute to them, or typically do. And so to create a deadline, I would have to go to the actions menu and click on the deadline link here. So the form that comes up should look very familiar to what we just saw. So if I scroll down a little bit so you can see. So this is a task, the title is required. So I'm just going to say my deadline here. So what's different about this is that you can create a case alert. I'll go ahead and create one. I'm not sure if you all are going to use case alerts, but basically they're a element that can show up on case profiles that hopefully will alert you to that something needs to be done, or something special about this case that somebody wants you to see. Deadlines can have types. This is currently empty, which is not too surprising on a demo site. Not a lot of organizations that I see anyway have separate deadline types. So most people just kind of skip that. Due date, again, can manually enter that, select a date. I'll go ahead and I'll just select tomorrow. I'll leave the list date at today, completed as no. I won't bother entering a note. And so if I don't want to get a reminder, then I can just leave everything as it is. Click on continue. And you do have case alerts showing up in your case profile. So this is what a case alert looks like. And this one's from the deadline. So it tells you that. It shows you've got a link to click to see any details about it. And since it comes from a deadline, so if you have, question is, okay, I've put that alert on there and now I'm done with it. Since it's a deadline alert, the way to get rid of it is just to mark that task, that deadline as completed. So I clicked on alert details on the alert. That took me to the profile page. So I can mark that as completed. And now when I click on the link to go back to my case, that alert should be gone. And it is. All right, well, let's go ahead and create an event on this case as well. So since we're looking at this list, I'm just going to use the little plus button. So this brings up the event form. Just like with the task, it just shows me it's automatically linked to the case at the top. So I'm going to say my important event. Location is a free-form text box. It's optional, but that would be, if you're going to a hearing, going to a deposition or something like that, you can put some location information in there. Calendar events, just like type or tasks, can have different types. And this is also, a list of values that you all control. Event created date, kind of surprised that's not defaulting to today's date. It's optional, it's not a required field. So let's leave it blank and see if anything bad happens. Events can be all-day events. So if you select yes for all-day event, it just gives you the start date of the event. So actually the date of the event. For no, it's going to default to starting the event at the top of the next hour and then run for an hour. So if you're wondering why it says 4 o'clock, that's because I'm on the East Coast, and I'm sure that the count that I'm using has been set to display things in the East Coast time zone, Eastern time zone. So that's why it's saying from 4 to 5. There is a front desk item, which is not going to be useful to you all. It's not required. You can skip over that. Private events, defaulting to no. The same thing that I said about, the private field on task. If you have something that's truly private, don't put it in Legal Server. Schedule by shows you the office and the program. I can't change those. You can create recurring events in Legal Server. Your recurrent schedule can be daily, weekly, every 2 weeks, and so forth. And then notice that you're required to put in a recurrence ends date. So you can create recurring events, but I always like to caution people, the way recurring events work in Legal Server right now is that it's going to create a series of independent events. So what you would not be able to do, so if I went in and said I wanted to, create a weekly event and recurrence ends, let's say the end of the year. So at this point, that would create 26 or 7, independent calendar events. And what I would not be able to do is go in and edit that series of events. And so like, change the start or stop times or something like that and have it change on all the events. So depending on the calendar system you're using, you're probably used to editing a recurring event and seeing something like, change just this event or change all future this event and all future events and that sort of thing. So currently can't do that within Legal Server. So if you wanted to change something about that series of events, you'd have to be changing, the 26 or 27 independent ones. So just be careful with how far you go out, with recurring events. Events, just like tasks, can have multiple people linked to them. So I'll continue picking on Stan. You can add a note. So if you click the add a note button, so in the task, it just had a little box there that you could look at or skip over. If you choose to add in a note to a calendar event, this is going to look, if you've seen case notes on cases, the format here is going to look pretty familiar to you. So you can optionally put in a subject, you can put in a required body, or you're required to put in something in the body. So just going to say body of my calendar event. And like in other places with notes, you can email the note to somebody or multiple people. You can also notify multiple internal Legal Server users via the messaging system. Add reminder. It's going to work just like it did for task. And so you can set a reminder relative to the event start date time. You can optionally put in as a different message, and then you're going to have the same options over here on the right as far as who you can have the reminders sent to. I don't think I pointed out before, but if you click on add reminder and then you decide, yeah, I really don't want a reminder on this event, you do have a remove reminder button at the upper right. And if you add multiple reminders on an event or a task for each one of them, you're going to have that same remove button.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah.
Kelly has a question there related to that. Is there such a thing as putting up an event that doesn't have anything to do with the case?
Legal Server has that capability, but my understanding is that you all have configured your site because if you open up that capability, then everybody could see everybody else's calendar events, and that you all wanted to keep it locked down so that you can only see events within your office.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Sure. All right, so I've created my calendar event. If I go back to the case, then hopefully I'm going to see my event down here, and I do. Just like with the task, you've got the title is a clickable link, so you can go back into the event. Events are actually, yeah, so I don't think you have delete. Okay, so sometimes some organizations have a delete link operational, so I was going to show you that, but you don't have that there, which is fine. But you can come in here and you can add an additional note to the event. You can add a task to the event, which is pretty rare. And I don't see an edit link. Let's see if we have. Yeah, I don't see an edit link on the event. That's probably just a configuration on the demo site. Typically, you're allowed to come in and edit your events. You also have a link down here to add an arraignment. Let's see what that does. Okay, so that brings up an add arraignment form. Would you like to associate this event to a case, defaulting to yes to that case? So this is actually, yeah, this is basically just editing the existing event, it looks like. So I'm not sure. I don't know, Thomas or Stan or somebody, do you know, is somebody just testing things out on the demo site, or is the add arraignment link supposed to do something specific?
I think that's supposed to be something specific just because it could be like the first major event that someone's either doing or has done. It may be doing the intake at the same time.
Okay, so at least right now, I'm not seeing it really do much of anything other than bringing up the event in somewhat editable form, so I can go in and change things. So
I think it was just another way to get to that.
okay. All right, so that is task deadlines and events on cases. Don't know if y'all are going to use the feature or not. A pretty common question at this point is whether or not there's any integration with Outlook or Google Calendar or any other external calendaring system. There is an option that you all can enable that would, and it's not in a full integration, but what it would let you do is pull your legal server calendar events into your external calendar as a read-only version. So you would be able to see your legal server events in your external calendar, but you would not be able to edit or do anything with them. And you would not be able to, from your external calendar, you would not be able to add an event to legal server. So some people find that useful. And so it's an option that you all can provide. All right, so the other thing that we are supposed to talk about today is running reports. And this is specifically for end users. So the reason we specify end users is that in terms of reports in LegalServer, there's two groups of people. One is typically a small group, and is what I refer to as report writers. Those are people who can build and edit reports on your site. So very often, you know, all the site administrators are report writers. You could have other people that are report writers that aren't site administrators. But what we're going to be talking about today is somebody who's not a report writer. And so as it indicates there on our agenda, everyone can run reports in LegalServer, assuming they have permission to run an individual report. So let me flip back over to the demo site. To run reports, probably not going to be too surprised. I'm going to go to the reports tab in the navigation bar. And this shows us a list of reports on the site. So I can see that we're looking at 1 through 20 of 85 reports that are active. I do have a view all link here. So if I want to see all 85 on the page at one time. For each report, you know, I see the name, then I see some other information that whoever built the report can add to it. All of these things, the category, the grouping, the office location, those don't relate to the report itself as such, like what's going to show up in the report. Those are just for the filtering. Because you may notice too that this report or this list has the show filters icon. So you can come in if you have, you know, tons and tons of reports on your site, you can filter down the list by various fields over here. You also, in terms of if you have a lot of reports on your site and you do run, you know, a few reports pretty regularly, if you don't want to come to this list every time and then, you know, scroll around on the list or otherwise, you know, use the search box to find the report that way, there's this idea of marking a report as your favorite. That's this little column on the very far right. There's a little heart symbol that is grayed out if something's not one of your favorite reports. But the idea is you can click that little symbol and mark, you know, different reports as your favorites. And then you can filter this list down by only your favorite reports. And some people just come over here instead of bothering with that. They will just come to the reports page and they'll click the little icon at the top twice. Because first that would sort by your non-favorites and then favorites at the bottom. And then you click that twice, it'll show all your favorites at the top up here. But that is also completely optional. You're not required to do that. So all of these reports are, again, these are reports that somebody that's a report writer has added to your site. So they've added the report, they've determined whether or not you will have permission to run the report. And then if you do have permission to run the report, they will have determined what you can see and what filters you can apply to a report. So let's see if we can find a good report, a good example here. Well, this one's a good example of showing you what will happen if you click on a report name, and it may tell you permission insufficient. You're not allowed to view this report. If you ever get this and you think it's a report you should be able to run, that's when you need to talk to somebody who's a report writer and get them to go in and edit that report and then add, this is all based on user roles. So they would add your user role or give your user role permission to run the report. So let's go back to the main reports page and see if we can find something to run that we have permission to run. So let's look at this age race report. All right, so I have permission to run it. So all the reports that you are allowed to run, they will all look essentially the same as far as the pieces go to them. So you're going to have a section at the top called filter options, another section called data options. You'll have this selected options, which will show you any filters that will be applied to the report. And then typically you'll see a data table, which is what the columns of information down here. Now this report's been set to, I have to click on the run button to see any data. So I'll go ahead and do that. And let's see if we get some data. Yeah, we're going to get some. So the first element we see on the report down here, you won't see this on all reports, but whoever built this report, they added this element that we call a crosstab. So you can see it's just saying it's wanting to show you a breakdown of all of the cases that are being pulled into this report. Then show me a breakdown by race, and then for each race, show me a breakdown by age at intake. So I can see out of the cases that are being pulled here, there are 2 cases where the client's race is Asian and the age at intake was 18 to 59. 1 case for Asian Pacific Islander where the client's age was 60 plus, age at intake was 60 plus, and then the total is 3. Within the crosstab, you've got an overall total of 33, and that's typically going to match your row count down here. So the row count that you have is going to show you at the top of the report. So you may already be getting the sense that these are kind of like lists in LegalServer. So you look at a list, the first thing to look at is how many records are you getting. If it's not the expected records that you were expecting to see, then that's going to be typically because of filters. So if I notice here, we're looking at 1 through 20 of 33. I do have the option to view all 33 of these records at the same time. The columns that I see here by default were set by whoever built this report. But I'll show you in a second here how you may have additional options to show other columns or hide some of these columns. So why are we seeing 33 records on this report? So let's go back up to the filter section. So in the selected options section here, I can see there's a default filter on this report of date closed, January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. And if I open up the filter section here, I can see there's that date closed filter that's been set. And this report is actually using one of the date presets, the current year one. So the date presets are nice because they adjust automatically. So this report stays as is, and you go and run it sometime in January of next year, these dates would automatically be adjusted to 2022. The person who built this report determined what you can filter on up here. So it looks like most of the columns in the report, you have available filters, but not necessarily all of those. So you can filter for age at intake, which is just a numeric field. So you have options on number fields like this you want to filter for equal to, greater than, less than, is not, or between. So if I wanted to, for example, focus on, I saw that one case where at least one case where somebody was 60 or over. So I'll put 60, well, actually, I want to use, put in 59 because it's a greater than filter. So greater than 59. Notice as I made a change that shows up down here in the selected options section. Now, if I click run report, then the crosstab and the data table is going to filter down. And so we have one result, one case where the person's age at intake was greater than 59. You can see it's 70 down here. Now, if I go back up to the filter options, I'll go ahead and take that filter off. Some of the other types of filters you can see are county of residence is an example of a lookup field in Legal Server. So this is the style of filter you're going to get. You can go in here and select, as many of these as you want to. It tells you at the bottom this is, one of these multi-select lists you've probably seen in Legal Server. So I'm holding down my left control key, command key if you're on a Mac. While I'm holding that down, then my selections or my clicks become on-off toggles. You also have the option to exclude. So I could say, for example, I want to see the age race report for all of the cases closed last year, except those where the county of residence is set to Carson City. You have the option to show inactive values, which may be useful to you, especially, right after you go live, because there may be some values that at some point your site administrators that are appearing in your data, but at some point the site administrator is going to go in and activate those. But if you need to see those, you also have 2 convenience links here to select none. So if I've come down and made some selections and realized, I just want to back out of that, I've got the select none link, and optionally I have the select all link there. Gender is also a lookup field, so that's just like county. I've got the 3 options here. Go ahead and show inactive values. So this is a good example for show inactive values. Notice all these values that are still in the system, but they've been marked inactive by your site administrators. On your demo site, they may stay here for a long time. On your live site, typically they would go in and merge these inactive values into other values. Office name is also a lookup list. Displays a little bit differently, but you can see you've got all the active offices here, which a lot of these, I'm sure at some point, well, no, these may not be duplicates, but some of these may go inactive. So there's no, if there were any inactive offices on your site, when I got to the bottom of the active list, then it would show me an inactive header, and I would see any inactive offices there. Program name is also a lookup value, or lookup field, I should say. It does have a couple of inactive values in here. And then finally, race is also a lookup filter. Now I'll come back to the date closed just to show you on the date filters on reports. If you just need to see a specific range of dates, you can manually type that in here. So for some reason, I only wanted to see things that were, closed in January of this year, then I can manually put in those dates. Maybe a little bit hard to see, but down in the selected options, you can see my dates would have changed down here. You also have these date presets that I mentioned. So you can scroll up to the top of the list. So you have an option for all dates, including no date, any date set, no date set, past 7 days, 30 days, and so forth. So all these presets would do just kind of what it sounds like. So if I just wanted, all the cases, the date closed was today, I select that preset, that'll fill in the dates for me. The more common ones, depending on the report you're running, are things like current year, previous year, current month, previous month, and so forth. So I'll do previous months, and let's see if we get any results down here. So I'll come down and click on Run Report, and got us back to 2 cases. So 2 of the cases were closed in the previous month in your demo site. Now your other big section up here at the top is your data options. These are the columns that are going to be displayed by default, and you may have some additional columns that you can display as well. So this has you have 2 lists here. And again, what appears in these 2 lists is determined by whoever built this report. So whoever built this report said, display the gender column followed by the case number, age and intake, race, and county of residence. Also on this report are date closed, office name, and program name. So what I can do here is to come in and say, you know, well, really, I want case number to appear before gender, so I can select it and then click on the up button. I can also say I want to, since I'm looking at closed cases, I want to see the date closed. So I can select that on the left, click the little button that's got the arrows pointing to the right. And then let's say, you know, age and intake, I'm not interested in for what I want. So I will click on that and then use the button, push it to the left. And let's just say that, you know, I want date closed right after case number. All right, so I'll make those changes and come down and click on run report. And what did I do? No, yeah, I made the changes. Okay. I thought I clicked the wrong thing. So let me go back and expand this filter again. So we get a few more cases here. I think we had it on current year was the default. All right, so now if we come back down into the data table down here, I can see there's the case number all the way over to the left, date closed, gender, race, and county of residence. Age and intake has gone away. The other thing that I can do on this report is I can change the sort. So whoever built this report did not put a default sort on it. If I put my mouse cursor over one of the column headings like case ID, I'll see two little triangles will show up here. So I can click on the upward pointing triangle to get an ascending sort. So you may be able to see the 14 dash case and the 20 dash cases show up here. If I select instead the downward pointing triangle, it'll just do the reverse, do a descending sort. So the 21 cases show up first here. If I make changes to the sort order of this report, then I will see that little line up here that tells me what the ordering is. You can sort by more than one column on a report at a time. The trick that you need to remember is that you want to apply your sorts in the reverse order. So let's say that I wanted to sort by county of residence and then by date closed. So to do that, I would take off my date or my case number sort. I would sort by county of residence. And notice it says ordering up here, county of residence. And then I would sort by case number. And so, and actually I just did that backwards. I'm sorry about that. So notice that my sort is by county of residence and case number, which is, you know, reverse of what I wanted. So to reverse that, I would take off the county of residence filter and then reapply it. And so what I should have shown you and just did now is that, you know, the last sort becomes the first one. So as you click to make sorts on columns, they come out in the reverse order that you might expect them. So now I can see I've got county of residence, so Carson City cases show up, and they're going to show up in by case number order, then the Churchill cases by order, and so forth. And so the case number is, so let's do by gender, county of residence, and gender. So you can see all the Carson City cases come out, and then, you know, the female, then the other, Churchill other, you know, and so forth. Now, if I come back up to the top of the report here, there's two other things that I want to show you. One is that, you know, I came into this report, it had some default columns, default filter, default, actually didn't have any default sorts on it, but I've come in and I've, you know, changed some filters. I've changed the columns that are displayed down here, and I've also changed the sort order. Now, you do have a save report button up here. What that would do in Legal Server is let you save the structure of this report, meaning, the columns that are displayed, the sort order, any other filters that have been changed. Now, I noticed on the main reports page, you don't have a tab that's going to show you saved reports. So I'm not sure, what the intention is, going forward or on your live site. Whether or not, you'll be able to do this and have it be useful to you. But I'll just show you, I'll go ahead and click on the Save Report button and show you what this feature does in case you do get to use it. So this is just going to take the name of the base report that I open and stick the word copy at the end. So that's not a very helpful name, but you might want to come in, for example, and say, age race report, for, now you could just come in and say something, demo trainer version, but depending on what you're doing, it's like if you're looking at a specific subset of cases or something like that, you may want to say, this is the age race report for, the X cases, whatever those happen to be. There's a lot of other things that you can select on the save report page. None of them are required. There's some notes you can put in. Those will show up at the top of the report. Somebody else runs it. All of these other fields that you can select here don't affect the actual functioning of the report. These all just relate to the filters that you can see on the main reports page. If you save a report, it's automatically going to be marked as one of your favorites. So if I click save, it'll just show me my report. And now if I go back to the main reports page, I want to show you a couple of things here. One is I want to come back to this age race report that we started with, and I'm just going to run it again just to show you that it's got all of those original defaults that we saw when we first ran this report. So in other words, any of the changes that I've made, whether I save them or not, can't affect the base report. So don't worry that if you come to a report and make changes to it, you're not going to be overwriting that report and possibly getting people upset with you because you've messed up a base report. If I go back to the main reports page, the one thing that I was mentioning, the question mark on the saved reports feature, is you don't have a tab here to list saved reports that people have created. People like myself who are not report writers in the system. So that save report button is not going to do you a lot of good unless you all add a separate tab up here to also show those saved reports. The final thing that I wanted to show you about running reports, then we'll go back and I'll just go back into the age race report. Is that just like lists of information in Legal Server, you may have seen already that you can export those to Excel. You have that option here in reports. So the icon is going to show up at the top right of the data table. This report has crosstabs on it, or has a crosstab on it. So at times, if you scroll down, you may come down here and you're expecting to see the Excel icon right out here to the right. Just realize it's going to be right below the run report button section there. So this will do just what it sounds like. It's going to export the data table. You can either download it or just go ahead and open it. So hopefully you can see on your screen that's opened up in my spreadsheet program, so you can see what that's going to look like. This is just the data table portion. So this is not a crosstab or charts or anything else that somebody's added to the report. If you do have crosstabs on reports like this, you'll see you have a link for the crosstab itself to export that to Excel. So that's going to come out. It's not going to have the nice borders and things like that, but it's going to have your data there. And then the final thing that I wanted to show you is you have the print icon out to the right. So before I click on the print icon, notice this report, we're viewing 1 through 20 of 33. So when you click the print icon, one is the Excel export, just like on lists, it's going to export, all the data rows. So if this was, we were looking at 1 through 20 of, 3,000 rows of results. It's going to take a little while to generate that file. Likewise, when you click the print icon, it's automatically going to open up another tab in Legal Server, and it's going to expand the data table so that you're viewing all of the rows. So the assumption is that, you go to click a report like this, you probably want to print all the rows. So for a report with 33 rows, not a big deal. But again, if you were looking at a report that had 1 through 20 of 3,000 rows, it's going to take a little bit for it to generate that page so that you can print it out. But I'll go ahead and click the print icon. And so in the background, it's expanded all of the rows on the report. And then it is invoked the print function. And so this is just prompting me to say, pick the printer that you want to send this to, or if you want to, the computer I'm working on, the default, when I go to print something is to print it to a PDF as opposed to a physical printer. But all of this here is your browser. So whatever your browser's normal features are when you go to print a web page, that's what you'll see up here. So you also have the option, if for some reason you just want the top up here, you could change pages to custom and just say you want to print, one page or something. The other thing that's you probably can't really see very well is up at the very top up here in the preview, is that it's going to give you the date and time that you printed this report, and it's also going to show you all of the filters that were applied. So oftentimes, if you're printing a report, it's not a huge deal. But if you are somebody that does reporting for grants and other things, and you want to keep a record of that, on this date at this time, based on these filters, we had closed X number of cases in the current year. So it's entirely optional. You don't have to do this, but this is a nice record if you just print, and especially if you just print the first page. You have a nice paper record of, on June 22nd at 4:01 p.m. Eastern time, you had closed 33 cases on the site. All right, so I'm just going to keep printing the PDF. It's not very exciting, so I'm just going to cancel. Again, this has opened up a new browser tab. If I scroll down, you'll see that it's just expanded to viewing all the rows in the report. And so this extra browser tab that got opened up, I can just close that and then go on about my business. All right, so as I expected, I didn't think it was going to take 2 hours to cover events task and running reports. And I don't see any other questions posted in the group chat. So feel free to post a question over there, unmute yourself, ask a question on the audio side.
Stan or John, either of you have anything to add or need clarified?
I do not.
The only thing I have to add is I suppose if each office wants a specific report that we don't have on there, we could always, the report writer can create one for you and we could label it for your office, or you can have it as your favorite. So you'll be able to run reports that you would need specifically for your office.
Thanks, Stan. Okay, Ron, well, nice going, very efficient there. Everybody can get back or maybe take a lunch they didn't think they were going to be able to take. So thank you for everything, and we'll see you the next time.
Okay. All right. Hope everybody has a good rest of the day.